Welcome to Alternate Health Thoughts, where we address common health questions with a mix of science, anecdotal experience, and a dose of common sense. Subscribe now to stay in the know. Did you know that 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer by the age of 70? Despite the risks, many people still underestimate the importance of protecting their skin from the sun's harmful rays. In this video, we'll dive into the essentials of sun protection, from understanding the types of radiation to the real purpose of sunscreen. But first, let's start with some quick facts that will set the stage for everything you need to know. While some sun exposure is essential for your health, excessive exposure is not good and can cause long-term skin damage. Once your skin takes on a slight hue of pink, you've had your share of sun for the day, and it's time to put on sunscreen or get into the shade. Sunscreens ought to filter both UVA and UVB rays, broad-spectrum sunscreens, but most don't. Alternatives to sunscreen or additional methods to prevent overexposure include using clothing or other coverings, essentially providing shade to your body. As teenagers in particular, we should steer clear of these sunscreens containing oxybenzone. It is a known hormone disruptor. Summertime. Time to go to the beach, hang out at the river or park with your friends. Just time to be outside. Running, swimming, soccer camp, or just hanging out. I am sure all of you have been ingrained with the notion that you must always put on that pesky sunscreen. It is not only annoying to most of us, but it is also something we mostly just accept as the right thing to do, even though, admitted, we occasionally skip and neglect. Matter of fact, some schools or daycares will not even allow you to go outside if you do not have sunscreen to put on. So unfair. So let's look at what this is all about. There are 2 forms of UV radiation that reach the Earth's surface, UVA and UVB. The UVB has a lower wavelength but higher energy than UVA. Interestingly, even though it has the higher energy, it does not penetrate deeper into your skin than UVA. This is because while UVB is absorbed by your body rather efficiently, UVA radiation is not. This allows it essentially to slip through and penetrate deep into your dermis, potentially causing skin damage. This also means your risk for wrinkles shoots up. As a response to the exposure to either of these, the skin starts a repair process to mediate any damage and also creates melanin, a skin pigment that acts as a natural sunscreen. Yes, a tan. In an ideal case, the amount of sun exposure, repair potential, and melanin created are all nicely balanced. So you get a bit of a tan, your skin nicely heals, and the sun exposure has given you all the perfect amount of benefits, such as vitamin D production and everything else. Unfortunately, the ideal case is often, exceeded and pushed to and beyond the limit. Once your skin starts showing a light touch of pink, you have reached your ideal sweet spot. But if you are in the middle of a soccer game, tennis match, or just at the beach with your friends, it is hard, or sometimes even impossible to extract yourself from continued exposure. That is where sunscreen comes in. SPF. SPF measures sunscreen protection from UVB rays, the kind that cause sunburn and contribute to skin cancer. SPF does not measure how well a sunscreen will protect from UVA rays, which are also damaging and dangerous. While SPF numbers start at 2 and have just recently reached 100, dermatologists generally recommend using an SPF 15 or SPF 30 sunscreen. To figure out a more personalized application and how long you can stay in the sun with a given SPF, use this equation: minutes to burn, without sunscreen times SPF number equals maximum sun exposure time. The biggest problem, though, is that this is an ideal scenario, where nothing rubs, washes, or sweats off your screen. Since such is rather utopian, it is still recommended to reapply the sunscreen about every 2 hours or after your last swim. Now that we understand SPF, let's talk about how to correctly apply sunscreen and avoid common mistakes. Applying sunscreen might seem straightforward, but many people don't do it correctly, reducing its effectiveness significantly. First, always apply sunscreen at least 15 to 30 minutes before going outside. This gives it enough time to form a protective layer on your skin. Don't wait until you're already in the sun to start applying, as this leaves your skin vulnerable to UV damage. Second, use enough sunscreen. Most people apply only 25 to 50% of the recommended amount. For an adult, this means about 1 ounce, or enough to fill a shot glass to cover the entire body. Don't forget often missed spots, like the ears, back of the neck, and tops of the feet. Third, reapply every 2 hours, or more often if you're swimming or sweating. Water-resistant sunscreens are not waterproof, and they can still wear off, especially with towel drying. Also, pay attention to the expiration date. Sunscreen loses its effectiveness over time, so using an expired product won't give you the protection you need. And finally, don't rely solely on sunscreen. Wear protective clothing, hats and sunglasses, and seek shade whenever possible, especially during the peak sun intensity hours between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below with your thoughts and questions. Your feedback helps us create better content for you. Now, let's dive into the fascinating science behind how sunscreen actually works. How does sunscreen work? Sunscreens, which can be sprays, lotions, gels, or waxes, are usually made up of a mix of chemicals. Inorganic chemicals in sunscreen can reflect or scatter the light away from the skin, and organic or carbon-based ones can absorb UV rays so that our skin doesn't. Among the inorganic chemicals are minerals such as zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. They reflect UV rays, similar to how white paint reflects light. The white-colored noses on beachgoers in the 1980s and 1990s were due to these compounds. Because manufacturers make the inorganic particles much smaller now, we don't see the visible white. Some organic chemicals are, for instance, avobenzone or oxybenzone. Instead of physically deflecting UV light, these molecules absorb UV radiation through their chemical bonds. As the bonds absorb UV radiation, the components of the sunscreen slowly break down and release heat. Sunscreen lotions labeled broad-spectrum block against both UVA and UVB, but currently there is no standard for listing UVA blocking power. Inorganic chemicals that deflect sunlight will deflect both UVA and UVB rays, the organic ones not necessarily. Plus, the organic chemicals are getting more and more under scrutiny for potential serious hazardous side effects. Everything from hormone disruptions to outright causing cancer, including skin cancer. According to a report by the Environmental Working Group, an advocacy group based in Washington, D.C., scientists found that oxybenzone absorbs into the skin and is present in urine long after sunscreen is applied. Especially since this chemical is known to be hormone disrupting, researchers have suggested not using sunscreens containing this chemical on children, according to the EWG report. Brilliant. So US teenagers, who already have to deal with our own hormone challenges, I would guess, just as the children mentioned in this report, should probably steer clear of these sunscreens containing oxybenzone. Personally, I prefer a simple zinc oxide-based sunscreen and using my clothing to protect myself from excess exposure. Basic clothing is a good start. Some clothing even has extra sun-blocking materials woven in. So let's keep the chemicals to a minimum and use good sense when it comes to getting that tan. Now that we understand how sunscreen works, let's debunk some common myths and reveal the facts. Myth 1. You don't need sunscreen on cloudy days. Fact: up to 80% of UV rays can penetrate clouds. So even on overcast days, sunscreen is a must. Myth 2. A higher SPF means you can stay in the sun longer. Fact: SPF is not an indication of time, but rather the level of protection. While higher SPF provides more protection, it doesn't mean you can stay out indefinitely without reapplying. Myth 3. People with darker skin don't need sunscreen. Fact: while darker skin has more melanin, which offers some UV protection, it doesn't shield you completely from UV damage or skin cancer. Everyone, regardless of skin tone, should use sunscreen. Myth 4. Sunscreen is only necessary if you're going to be outside for a long time. Fact: UV rays can affect you even during short periods of exposure. like walking to your car or sitting by a window. Daily application is key. Myth 5. Sunscreen is waterproof. Fact: no sunscreen is entirely waterproof. They are water resistant and need to be reapplied after swimming or sweating. By understanding these myths and facts, we can make better choices for our skin health. Remember, protecting your skin today means healthier skin tomorrow. Please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below with your thoughts and questions.